Hello my lovely, I'm Zoe at Scandinotions and today we're going to sew up the Virginia. But before we do, I'm just going to show you, give you a little tour around. She is a bag which can be made in cotton or vinyl or cork. She has 4 exterior slip pockets, quite deep. She has a snap fastening. She has beautiful shoulders, a short handle. She is designed to be worn, you can hand carry or to carry on your shoulder. Give you an idea, I am 5'1", which is about 160 centimetres. And she also has a very beautiful bottom. All Virginia bags have a beautiful bottom. I'm just going to show you the Virginia in vinyl. She has all the same as in quilting cotton, except she has different finishes because of the way that she is constructed. She still has 4 deep pockets on the outside. She still has the gorgeous bottom, and inside, I want to show you, because it is a snap fastening on Virginia, inside you will find a lovely zip pocket with a template, with an overlay, and also for security, inside here I have made a size large board bag without the handles and with a rectangle ring, so she can be clipped securely inside the bag. So if you are worried about no zip inside, you can put a zippered pouch inside and clip it with the security ring connector. Okay, so let's get going. Right, so we've got all our pattern pieces cut out, they're fused. We've got a zip with the pull placed on already. We've got a couple of strap connectors. Rectangle rings are fine, these ones are a little bit on the fancy side. I've got my bag feet, but you don't need to use those. You can also use rivets or you can use nothing at all. And I've got a couple of rivets. I'm only going to set 2 today because I'm using cotton. If you use vinyl, it might create some issues with your machine being able to get through all the layers, so it's advised to use extra hardware, which you can find details of in the pattern. Then I think we're ready to start preparing the lining. Alright, so I've got one of my lining pieces, I've got my zipper overlay, and I've got my zip with the pull on. So what I'll do first, just pop that to one side, and then on the other side, on the wrong side of the overlay, I've placed 2 strips of DST, double-sided tape, and I've kept them out of the 1/8 of an inch, at least an eighth of an inch of the edges, all of the edges, the inside and the outside. But before we peel off the backing, I'm going to make marks, centre marks at the top and bottom of our lining panel. Do that on the right side of the lining panel. Then take your overlay and find on one of the edges, the top edge, the centre mark. I'm going to draw a line 2 1/4 inches down from the top flat part of the bag here, and this line will be about 6 inches long. Take off the backing of the DST. There we go. Try not to stretch the overlay downwards, have that opening nice and even. And now we're going to stitch around the outside edge all the way around, and I'm going to just we're going to do it an 1/8 of an inch from the edge. You won't be able to see these on my overlay, however I'm just making a little dot an 1/8 of an inch in from each corner, and that gives me a nice little marker to aim and stop and start and pivot from when I'm doing my top stitching. And we're going to start and stop with long tails. and stop in exactly the same place as you started. All right, and we turn over to the back and we have our bobbin threads here. And then we just pull gently on the bobbin thread. Just find something to help me pull this through. And that bottom thread, we just pull that up. And we do the same on the other bobbin thread. Put my tweezers through the loop and pull it up. Okay, and now we have a continuous stitch on the right side, and we can tie all these off at the back. Okay, now if you wanted to put a little bit of glue on the back, adhesive, that's up to you, or fray check even. All right, so now we're going to take some scissors to the lining piece only. Fold it up and make a little cut. And from the back, we're going to very, very carefully, taking lots of care not to cut into the overlay underneath. We're going to trim around here on the lining about, that's 1/2 inch from the stitch line, and that's fine. All right, it doesn't have to be pretty, nobody's going to see this bit. And we turn back over to the right side. Now I'm going to bring in my zip. I'm going to do a little bar tack on each end. Okay, so bring in your pocket lining pieces, and we're going to find and make centre marks top and bottom of each, and on each side on the right side of the zipper. All right, so take one of the interior lining pieces and have it right sides up, have your zip right side up, and with our centre marks here we're just going to match them. We're going to have the edges aligned, and we're going to clip that in place, and we'll attach the zipper with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. We're going to bring in the second lining piece, still making sure that the width is the longest and the height is the shortest measurement. We're going to place them right sides together, and we're going to just pull that zip up so that the wrong side of the zip again is on the right side of the lining panel. Line up our little marking there in the middle and clip these together. Okay, and then we'll attach that again with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so now when we pull that out, we're going to see the right side of the zip and the wrong side of each of the lining panels. And if you don't mind ironing close to your zip or your zip tape, you can just press these seams down. So now our zip seams are lying nice and flat. We're going to put some more double-sided tape along the edges of the tape again. And we can take that backing off straight away. We'll bring in our lining piece again, right sides up, that overlay facing you, the zip will be right sides up, and we'll put our lining panel as centrally as possible onto our zipper tape. This can take a little minute, so don't rush yourself. The zipper coil needs to be running horizontal through the opening of the overlay. It needs to be central. Make sure that it's not going all wonky, because if it's wonky now, it's going to be wonky when you sew it. The zipper pull should be through, pull that through the aperture in the overlay. And then I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to make my little marks in the corners. And now I'm going to top stitch all around this open rectangle. Now, before I do, it might be worth saying, have your pockets open so that we don't sew anything in the back of here. And I like to just give mine a little pin so it stays in place. For this bit, I also prefer to have long tails so I can tuck them at the back and knock them off like we did before. But as you can see, I've used my cutter, so I'm just going to use a little leader of fabric, and with my needle up, I'll just pull that out. So now I have long tails. turn to the back of your work. Now you've got two options here. You can, if I just remove these pins now, we don't need them. You can either pull them through to the pocket, the inside of the pocket so nobody can see them, or you can take a needle, a hand sewing needle, and pull them through to this middle section where nobody will see them at all, although nobody's going to see them on this side, so I'm okay with just tying these off. So now on the wrong side of the lining, we're going to have the two right sides of the zipper panels brought together. So fold down the top one, and you want to just make that crease along the seam allowance there, and then lining up the sides of each of these pocket panels, you're going to notice that you've got a lot of overhang. That's fine, that's intended. We're just going to put a couple of clips in the sides, and then we can trim this bottom piece here level with the top piece. Right, so I brought my pressing mat back in and I've removed those clips for a second, and we're making a mark on the wrong side of each of the lining panels. Now we're going to fold each of these edges up, wrong sides together along the line that we just drew. So we'll clip the sides again. Okay, so we're going to move the lining panel out of the way for this, and we're going to go through all layers down the sides. Backstitch well at these ends because that's going to be a little bit of a stress point. Okay, so next we're going to install our snap. Okay, so here you can either transfer the marking from the paper pattern piece, or you can make a mark which is 1 3/8 of an inch down from the centre mark that you made earlier. And I'm going to mark out where I need to put it. Just going to make a little snip. And I also like to future-proof it by putting at the back a little bit of stabilising fabric. So I've got some vinyl, or I've got some cotton fused with thermolam. So yeah, these are actually from the corners that you snip away from boxy bags. Always worth keeping hold of those. In fact, I've got a jar here which is full of them. Make similar linings here, markings, sorry. Snip that in the same way. Pop some fray check on here. Then pop this on the back with the colour facing towards the back because I don't want that going through the fabric. There we go. And then put the back plate on. We'll do the same for the male piece on the other side. Now on the wrong side of each of these, I'm going to put a piece of duct tape. Now I'm not going to put it onto a lot of people like to put it onto the lining panel itself, but I'm not going to do that. In fact, I'm going to just trim around it, making sure not to cut the lining piece itself, and just make sure that it stays on top of the piece of stabiliser that you put in there, and repeat that for the second lining panel. Okay, now both of our lining panels are prepared. Okay, so bring in your pattern piece for the security ring connector, and on the wrong side you're going to make a line that is 1/2 half an inch in from the end. I've done 2, don't make that second one, you don't need it, I got carried away. And we're going to fold along that line and press it down, wrong sides together that is, and again folding wrong sides together, we're going to bring in a long edge to the other long edge, give that a nice little press to make a crease along the centre, then open it back out and bring each of the long edges in to that crease you just made and give it a press in place. And as you're doing this, be sure to keep this short edge folded over that original fold that you made. Keep that in place. And then you can fold those back to the centre again, because marks have come out of place. Oh, that's hot. And then fold the two folded edges together and clip that in place. And then we can top stitch all the way around 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Okay, then on the folded edge, make a little line, and then we can bring in our swivel hook. So then I'm going to sew as close as I can to this ring. I'll also sew this end down. Now it's up to you whether you want to do a rectangle, whether you just want to do horizontal bars, vertical bars here. Go with what you feel. Okay, and if you're using vinyl, you want to put a rivet there instead of stitching. That's a good idea. So I brought in one of our prepared lining panels. You can use either of them for this, and then I'm going to make a mark in at the side edge, 10 inches down from the top. And I'm going to, on the unfinished end of the security strap, I'm going to make a mark 1 inch in. Right, so with these marks in place then, I'm going to lie my security strap horizontal across the lining panel, and the line on the security strap is going to be in line with the side edge of the lining panel, and it's going to be somewhere around that line there that we've marked on the lining panel. And then we can baste this in place. Now I can set that aside. So now I'm going to prepare the exterior pockets. So I've got two pattern piece 2s exteriors and 2 pattern piece 3s lining for the exterior pockets. And I'm just going to work on one at a time. First thing to do is to find the centre of the top and bottom of each of these panels. Okay, so with right sides together, we're going to align centre marks on our top edge of the pocket. And then we'll clip it together and sew it with our usual 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, I'm bringing in the pressing mat again because now we're going to open this seam allowance up, and we're going to press them open. First from the back and then from the front. Okay, then we're going to top stitch both sides of the seam allowance. And now we're going to bring the unsewn edges together, match the centre marks, clip the edges together, and then sew the edges together. And then we're going to turn the whole thing the right way through. And the seam that we have top stitched, that is going to be at the top. The untop stitched part is going to be at the bottom. So I'm going to just try to neaten this seam allowance at the bottom. And I don't want to see any of my lining poking out at the bottom of this pocket, so I'm going to just offset the exterior fabric a little. There, that's how it should look with the top stitched part here. And then we're going to top stitch along both of the folded edges, 1/4 of an inch from the edge. Okay, so making sure that we've got the top at the top and the bottom at the bottom, we are going to find the centre mark here. Then in chalk, I'm going to draw a line joining them up. Okay, pocket done. I brought in a main panel, an exterior main panel, and I'm going to draw a line 1 inch up from the bottom, from the very bottom edge, not from this edge. I'm going to draw a line all the way across. Keep it as nice and straight as you can, because that is going to be your pocket placement and you don't want it to be wonky. Then you're going to take the pocket, the bottom of the pocket, and we're going to put that directly on top of the line. And then you can clip that in place at the edges. Just make sure that the pocket is centered. And then to hold the pockets in place, we're going to baste along the side seam here. We do that for both sides. And then you can top stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the bottom of the pocket. Okay, so my centre seam is still visible. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to start top stitching at the bottom seam. I'm going to go up to the top. I'm going to keep stitching 1/8 of an inch away from the line, and then I'm going to come down the other side 1/8 of an inch to the other side of the line. If you're setting a rivet, make a mark 1/2 inch down from the top of the pocket, centred between the two stitch lines. Okay, so I'm going to use my Japanese hole punch to make a hole at the mark. I'll bring in my rivets, and again I'm going to use some fray check. I'm going to put my rivet inside the hole, and on the back side I'm going to pop my rivet cap on. So I'm going to bring out the big guns and I'm going to use my rivet press. Okay, so I'm just going to slide that in, make sure it's located at the bottom, and then making sure it's also central in the top. And then we have our rivet set. Then you need to do this all over again to make and attach the remaining exterior pocket to the remaining exterior main panel. Okay, so now we can bring in our exterior base panel and our bag feet strips. So we need to press our bag feet strips. So using the G700 as a guide, fold the exterior fabric over and press in place along both long edges. Do the same for the second one. And now we're going to draw on our base panel 2.5 inches in from each short end, a line from long edge to long edge. And then we'll take each of our bag strips and we're going to lie them with the long edges against these lines to the inside, towards the middle, not to the outer edges of those lines. So the first one will go here, because my line is here, and I can just pin that in place. And then we're going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edge of each of the long edges of the bag straps. And then we're going to measure in 7/8 of an inch from each long edge and make a mark in the centre. I'm using a permanent pen here so you can see it on this darker fabric, but it doesn't matter because that is where our feet are going to go. If you're not using feet, don't make these marks. If you don't have feet but you have rivets, it looks really cool with a couple of rivets instead of the bag feet. And we'll do that on all sides of the base. So now I'm going to bring in one of the prepared main panels and we're going to attach the base. So right sides together, and we're going to place it along the bottom of the main panel. Now you can see I don't mean this part here, I mean this part that protrudes down here, and they should match perfectly with your base panel. Then clip or pin in place and sew together. Now I've brought in my pressing mat again. I'm going to fold open the seam. From the wrong side, I'm going to press the seam open, and then with the seam still open, top stitch along the main panel, not on the base, 1/8 of an inch away from the seam, and start and stop where the base panel side edges end. So we'll start here and we'll stitch down to here. And then we'll repeat that to attach the second exterior main panel to the base. I forgot to mention this while I was recording, sorry. If you plan on using the optional fusible foam on the base of your bag, do it now. Fuse it to the wrong side before you sew up the side seams, which is the next step. Make sure to fuse it centrally. As I said, completely optional, it depends how you want your bag to be. So now we have the two main panels joined by the base. We're going to fold them over right sides together, and we're going to clip the sides together. Just a note, as you clip the sides, you'll want to make sure that the top and the bottoms of the pockets are level with each other. And so all the way along top to bottom. And repeat for the second side seam. Okay, before we go any further with this base, I can see that I have left something out. Now it is an optional step, but I will say that directly after you have top stitched from the right side the base panel after joining it, and before you start joining your side seams of the exterior, you can fuse an extra stabilizer onto the base of your bag, onto your base panel, because it's just preference. I prefer to have a nice sturdy bottom. So I'm using, fortunately, if I was using fusible foam, this would have been a bit too difficult, a bit too awkward to fuse without undoing the side seams. However, I'm using some peel and stick self-adhesive foam. Now, I'm guilty because I don't always read instructions when I should, but I can't be on my own with that, can I? Let me know in the comments if anybody else has been caught out like that. Have you sewn something that you really shouldn't have done, or skipped a step that's been a disaster for the rest of the bag? Let me know. Right, okay, so it is a bit inconvenient this, because I'm planning to use some bag feet. Now, getting them on is a little bit difficult if I can't access the whole thing through the top. If I was using a stiffer fabric, this would have been a problem. But because I'm using cotton, it's okay. I'm going to bring in my board. Just so you know, this is a Japanese hole punch, and it's super. I love it. It's really super efficient. Not so great on really thick fabrics. You can see there that it doesn't extend too deep into a fabric, but for this it's lovely. Might struggle a little bit with this, but we'll see how it goes. And this here that I use underneath, so I don't make holes in my because you will make some real damage with this. Just so I don't make any holes here. This is actually, yeah, it's an IKEA, I don't know if you can see that. It's an IKEA cutting board. I thought it was really dinky when I bought it, and then I realised, oh, I can use that for my mat for this. Right, so I'm going to go in the top of my bag. I'm going to roll it down a little bit, down to the top of the pockets. And then we should be able to see where we've made our marks. I can see where I've made the marks on there. And just make sure that your mat is fully underneath it, and be aware that if it's got a handle in, don't go straight through the handle and through to your workspace. Right, okay. You'll just have to believe me that I can see these. Just making sure it is absolutely centre. Really give it a good, yeah, look at that. Oh yeah, I've gone right through. Okay, I'm going to do all three of the rest of these now. I'm going to set my bag feet now. If you want to know how I'm doing this, I've got a tutorial which I will link to in the description below. Okay, so we've done the base, we've sewn up the side seams, and now we're going to close these corners. Open up the bag outwards, just open up the top, and then lay it down so that this side seam is level. Well, it runs centrally through the base. So if you line up both of these side seams with each other and turn this around, and the centre mark on the base and the side seam at the bottom all lined up with each other, then you should get quite a nice square finish to your base, and that means that your bag is going to look straight when it stands up. We can put some clips in there. There we go. And we do the same on the other side. It is worth taking a few minutes, if you need it, to get everything really lined up and square. There we are. Okay, and then if you want to, you can trim the seam allowances. I'm not too worried about it with quilting cotton. And then I'm just going to turn it so we can have a look at our corners and make sure we're happy with them. Yeah, that looks good to me. Okay, on to the next bit. All right, so I'm going to turn this back through to the wrong side, and then I'm going to set it aside and bring in my lining panels. We're going to lay them right sides together. We're going to line all of the edges, and when we're working on this panel, be aware that this needs to be tucked inside. If you want to pin it, now is a good time to do that. In fact, I'm going to do just that. So align all the edges and then clip or pin the side edges together. Okay then, so I need to make a mark 3 inches down. Doesn't need to be absolutely bang on, but it does need to be quite close. And then 2 inches up from the bottom edge, not from the very bottom edge, from the bottom of the side edge. And then between these two marks, we're going to stitch at a different seam allowance. So for the first of the stretch here, the first 3 inches, we'll use our normal 1 centimetre seam allowance. And then, that's a bit puffy, and then when we get to this mark, we're gradually going to increase to 1/2 inch. And we'll do that 1/2 inch all the way down. But then when we get to the 2 inch from the bottom mark, we're going to, here's my 1/2 inch seam allowance, we're going to bring it gradually in to the 1 centimetre, the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And you can do that very gradually, but in this last inch, it's very important that we have a 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So here's my mark, and I'm just going to swing in so that when I'm straight again, I'm at my 1/2 inch mark on my needle plate. I'm going to carry on down with 1/2 inch. Okay, so here is my 2 inch mark. So when I hit that 2 inch mark, I'm going to swing back in, straighten up, so that in this last inch, I'm going to be back to my 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. That's at the bottom, and similarly we swung out at the top. And we'll do that on the remaining side seam as well. And then I'm going to trim both the side seams to 1/4 of an inch from the stitch line. So just follow that around. And by trimming this, it's going to further help with issues of puffiness inside the bag and help your lining lie nice and flat. Now, on the wrong side of both the lining and the exterior panels, we're going to draw a line 2 inches down from these top short edges. So we'll start off with my lining. So we'll do that on both sides. Alright, so we're going to leave the exterior wrong side facing out, but we're going to turn the lining so that it is right sides facing out. Oh, and we can remove this pin now, I think. Now you can go ahead and put the lining inside of the exterior of the bag so that the lining is, as I said, right sides facing out, and the right side of the lining and the right side of the exterior are facing each other. So match up the centre marks on the front and back panels of the bag, and then also match up the tops of the bag, the short edges at the top of the bag. And when you've done the 2 tops of the bag, 2 centres, clip all the way around both curved edges. And if you're interested what I keep my clips in, this is the Ellis storage bag. It's a free pattern on my website. I'll put the details below, and it comes in 2 sizes, and it sits beautifully on an IKEA Scordis board. There we go. Right, so when you've got both sides clipped, we're going to sew them together, but we're going to start from these lines, where these lines are on the open edge, and we'll start sewing at this one, and we'll go all the way around and then stop when we get to the other line, and we'll do that on both sides. So I'm starting on my line, still 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So when you're done, your short ends of your bags should look like this. Right, so now we've got both edges, curved edges sewn, we're going to reach in right down through to the bottom of the lining and pull the whole of the bag, put your hand in the bottom of the lining, pull the whole of the bag through the lining. What you will notice is that there's little shoulders, these bits here, are going to have to be pulled through to the other side. So it takes a minute, use the method that you want to. What I'm doing is I've poked my fingers, because I'm using quilting cotton, I've poked my fingers through, and I'm just putting that in between my forefinger, the lining in between my forefinger and middle finger, and I'm just pulling it through. So then I can tease the exterior through the hole as well. And repeat it for the other side. Right, so we're going to stuff the lining back into the exterior of the bag. If you want to, give it a press. Now, don't top stitch this yet. I'm going to just fold my edges down around the curves. I don't want the lining to be visible from the outside, so I'm just putting it down a little bit, just offsetting it a tiny, tiny bit, not even 1/8 of an inch really, but you do it to your preference. So brought in my pressing mat again. We're going to press some seams into this bag, and then we're going to top stitch all around. First of all, fold the short end, the top bit at the very top, over by 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch. And then where we have sewn around the curves to the mark, we just follow where that wants to fold over. So we fold, make sure that these top edges are in nicely so there's no raw edges poking out, and then press that in place. And do exactly the same on the other side of the lining. We do the same with the exterior piece. So fold it over at the top by 3/8 of an inch. Just going to turn this over so we can press it. And then I'm going to do the same, bringing in these folds at the sides, but I'm going to disregard now seam allowances, and I'm going to make sure that whatever it's doing, whatever it's measuring, that the exterior and the lining are sitting flush together at the sides. Give that a nice press. I'm going to do exactly the same for the second open end. And now what you're going to do is top stitch all the way around. So you're going to do 1/4 of an inch seam allowance all the way around the curved edge. When you come to the short edges, you will do 1/8 of an inch from the edge, and then carry on around with your 1/4 of an inch. You'll come to this bit and 1/8 of an inch from the short end. Whether or not you have a flatbed or a free arm on your machine is going to determine which way you feel best about doing this. You can do it inside out, or you can do it the right way around. I'm going to turn mine to be wrong sides facing out, so the lining is facing out, because that is easier for me to have on my machine. I want to top stitch from the top, but that's going to be difficult to get under my needle and keep it nice and straight. So I'm going to turn mine inside out. Always keep this away from your foot. Okay, so now I'm going to turn my bag the other way around so that the exterior is right sides facing out. So the bag's the right way around. Right, now we'll deal with these shoulders. Okay, so we're going to draw lines that are 2 inches down from the top on the lining. So now we can bring in our rectangle rings. You'll see that mine are double connector, but it's basically the same as one rectangle ring. I'm just using this side and this side instead of this side and this side. Okay, so rectangle ring goes on down to the line on the line, fold over the lining right sides together and line up the side seams with each other. Then you can go ahead and clip that in place. If you're using rivets, you can go ahead and set one now. If you're using vinyl, there are instructions on how to do this bit in the pattern. For quilting cotton, you can either, depending on what kind of ring you're using, try to stitch across the width of the exterior fabric that's showing as close as you can to the rectangle ring. Personally, I found that these don't slip really, so it's enough to measure 1/2 inch across from the end of the strap and just set a rivet there make sure, because you're going to split that cotton and you're going to go through a stitch line, that you use plenty of adhesive. Or if you wanted to avoid that altogether, you can set one each side. The measurements for that and the instructions for it are in the pattern. And do the same on the other side. Okay, so now we need to attach the base to the lining. So we're going to open the zipper pocket. We're going to reach inside all the way down through that hole that we left at the bottom, and we're going to pull the bottom of the lining piece up through the pocket. Here we are, there's the pocket, there's the bottom that we left unsewn, and this is the lining that we're pulling through. This is the bit we need, the bottom edge of the lining. So we're going to make marks, centre marks, on the wrong sides of the long edges and the short edges of the base panel, and we're going to find the centre mark on the bottom edge of the lining. We're going to take the base panel and match up the centre marking and match up the side to the bottom of the panel. We'll also do the other side of the base panel and lining panel, main lining panel. All right, and then we're going to sew from the end, short edges of the base to the other short edge of the base, and not including the rest of the lining panels, just to where you've clipped it to there. And again for the remaining long edge of the base. So there we are. That's how it will start and end. Okay, then we're going to close the corners. We'll do that in the same way as we did the exterior base. So we'll match up the centre mark on the base with the side seam. Just clip that in place. This side seam of the lining needs to run down the centre. You can feel with your fingers down the centre of the base panel for it to line up. Okay, I can feel that's about right. So now I'm going to join this. I'm going to sew it across this corner. That is how it will look. And we'll do exactly the same with the other side. And then what we can do is just trim the sides down to about 1/4 of an inch. And now we can push the completed lining in back through the bottom of the pocket. There we go. And then we can push the lining back in all the way down to the bottom. There we go. And then we can finish off the body of the bag by either top stitching along these folded edges so that it closes the gap, or I've got a tutorial, I'll put the details, the link in the description box, to sew this closed by hand, and that will be a completely invisible stitch. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to sew them together. There we go. And push that back into the zipper pocket. All right, now we can do the zipper up. And that is the bag body done. Now we can turn to the handle. Bring in your final pattern piece, wrong side up, and we're going to fold and press the ends, the short ends, over the interfacing. And then we're going to fold it in half, right, wrong sides together lengthways, and just give that a little press. Open it back out and bring these long edges back in to the crease and give that a press. The same way that we did on the security ring connector. And then we'll do the same with the second long edge. Right, so then I will fold the two folded edges to meet each other. I'm going to give that another press and clip it all together. And then we'll top stitch all the way around. Decide which, they both look very similar, but you might be particularly proud of your stitching on one side and not the other. So decide which is going to be the top side and which is going to be the underside. I'm going to have this one as my underside because the pattern isn't as pretty as it is at the top. And on the underside, draw a line 1 1/4 inches from the end. Now, this is going to be the underside, so you will want to take the end with the line showing and put it into the connector towards the curved edge. And then with the connector on the line, fold over undersides, right sides together and put a clip to hold that in place. And then you can decide where you're going to stitch. I've put instructions and measurements in the pattern. I'm going to stitch mine just here for today. And then we're going to, with the underside again downwards, we're going to put the connector in so it's travelling towards the curved edge of the bag, and with the line on again, with the rectangle on the line again, we're going to fold it over and clip it together. And then again, I'm just going to stitch in the same way as I did for the last one. And then you need to give your bag a really lovely press. So congratulations on your Virginia bag. I hope for you, as it was for me, that it's the first of many.